So, are we just going by an episode 4 is where we put the big shakeup rule now? WandaVision showed us the sword base, Falcon and the Winter Soldier got very violent all of a sudden, and now everything we've been told about the TVA and the Timekeepers in Loki turns out to have been a lie. But hey, don't worry about all of that for now. Amidst all these topsy-turvy time-travel-y twists, there are still a few little extra details that warrant an extra look, and we are more than happy to go through them with you right now. Let's start off with a super quick one. Now, we've already gone over how Mobius' superior, Ravonna Renslayer, gets her name from the comic book character the same name, originally a princess on an alternate 40th century Earth who was the subject of affection of the time-traveling supervillain Kang the Conqueror. But here, we get to see her in her early TVA days as one of the hunters that callously arrest a young Sylvie. And sure enough, like any other hunter, she has a number, A23. Now take a wild guess what comic Ravonna first appeared in. If you guessed Avengers number 23, which lines up neatly with her designated hunter number, you've earned yourself a Josta-Cola. And we've already seen that the TVA sometimes deals with some pretty wild stuff when it comes to variants. And I still want to know the full story behind the Tour de France and Hulk Lokis, by the way. And Mobius makes that clear once more when he's bewildered that the TVA can't keep track of just 2 Lokis. After all, according to him, they've dealt with things like Kree, Titans, and vampires before, so why should this be so difficult? Now, we already know who the Kree are, and Titans most likely refers to the inhabitants of Thanos' home planet of Titan, but we haven't yet seen any vampires in the MCU. Only heard the occasional joke about them. However, Blade, Marvel's resident vampire hunter, is slated to get his own MCU movie starring Mahershala Ali, who is taking over from Wesley Snipes' beloved portrayal of the character from back at the turn of the millennium. So maybe that's what Mobius is referring to? It certainly seems like the most obvious shout-out, but who knows? It might also refer to Morbius the Living Vampire, who is also getting his own movie from Sony early next year. After all, Morbius was originally a Spider-Man foe, and with the coming of an MCU multiverse and all the cameo rumors surrounding not just Spider-Man No Way Home, but also the upcoming Venom sequel, it's not completely impossible. He was also the one who gave Blade vampiric powers in the comics and turned him into a Daywalker, so perhaps Morbius turning himself into a living vampire is a Nexus event? It's all just guesswork. I just kind of want to see Owen Wilson fighting time-traveling vampires. Hey, someone out there, make it happen. Hey look, it's Sif! Oh, we haven't seen her in a hot minute. Oh, and here she is, just kneeing Loki in the groin on repeat for hours on end. I don't envy our dear trickster god on this one. While he did bring it on himself by cutting her hair off for a joke, as he explains in the episode, I don't want to imagine what she'd be doing to him if he had cut off all of it like he did in the myth that this little interaction is based on. See, in the original Norse myths, Sif, who was Thor's wife by the way, had long, flowing golden blonde hair that she took great care of and was considered one of the most beautiful women in Asgard because of it. Until Loki cut it all off for a cheap laugh while she slept, leaving her completely bald. Now, I don't think I have to tell you that Thor and Sif got pretty mad about it, and Loki quickly promised to get the dwarves, known as the Sons of Ivaldi, to craft her a whole new head of hair made from actual gold. And just because Loki always has to be extra, in that same story, he also managed to trick 2 other dwarves, Brokkr and Atri, into making even more treasures for the Asgardians, including a little throwing weapon you might have heard of called Mjolnir. So actually, cutting off Sif's hair turned out pretty well for everyone involved back in the myths. In the MCU, though, this definitely seems like the more realistic reaction to cutting off someone's hair in their sleep. So maybe don't do that if you value your dangly parts. I shouldn't have to tell you to stick around for the credits in an MCU production by now, but oh boy, I really hope you did this time and didn't just end the episode on Loki getting pruned because, that's just depressing. Before we talk about the really cool part of the end credits though, we have to talk about how Loki, as he wakes up from his pruning in what appears to be a post-apocalyptic New York City, if that busted up Avengers Tower is anything to go by, asks if he has just died and gone to hell. And no, he doesn't mean the double hockey stick one, he means hell with just one L, known in Norse mythology as the land of the dead. See, the Vikings believed that if they died a worthy death in battle, their souls souls would ascend to Asgard and live in either the Great Hall of Valhalla or the Meadow of Folkvanger, destined to aid the gods in battle when Ragnarok comes. But if they were cowardly and dishonorable or died of things like sickness or old age, their souls would instead go to the much more dull and dreary Hel. Hel also happens to be the original name of Hela, who in myth was actually Loki's daughter and ruled over this realm, though she was not really the goddess of death as many misconstrue her to be. Now, why would Loki worry about ending up there, you ask? Because it seems to also be where Asgardians go when they die, as was the case with Balder, another son of Odin, who both in myth and in comics got killed thanks to yet another one of Loki's escapades. Okay, now are you ready for the really cool part of the post-credits scene? Then feast your eyes on this. Boom! 4 more Lokis, baby. That's right, it looks like pruning doesn't actually kill people, but rather sends them to another desolate world, where Loki is quickly met with a bunch of other variants. And all of them are pretty notable, aside from just providing one of the story's cooler twists so far. For one, we have this cool old fellow over here wearing not just a classic comics Loki costume, but actually the exact costume that Loki wore way back in Journey into Mystery number 85 in 1962, his first appearance in Marvel Comics. Between this and the WandaVision Halloween episode, someone working on the Marvel TV shows is clearly having fun recreating the classic Bronze Age costumes. Then there's this much younger Loki, a Kid Loki, if you will. In the comics, Kid Loki was the reborn and much more morally conflicted form of Loki, created after the original sacrificed himself during the Siege events, when Norman Osborn and the Dark Avengers invaded Asgard. And then there's this guy, and boy does he raise a lot of questions. At first glance, he doesn't seem to be based on anything from the comic books. And is that Mjolnir he's holding? To make things more interesting, the credits list him as Boastful Loki. Now there's a story to this one, and I want to know all of it. Oh, and last, but most certainly not least, there's this guy. Oh, look at him, he's so cute. I would call him Bitey. No, Crocodokey. 2 Lokis just weren't enough, were they? Nope, now we gotta get a whole bunch more. And I can already hear all the Loki fans squealing in excitement at the show suddenly finding itself practically flooded with trickster gods. Whoever's really behind the TVA's shenanigans, we have no doubt got a heck of a final showdown coming up.